Hello everybody, my name is Jacob Wolf. Today we're here with Christopher Hoisington and Fred Swan. This is the second part of our video because Christopher had to go plug his meter. So we're gonna pick up, actually I wanted to say one thing. This man, there have been very few times in my life where everything stopped and what somebody was saying was the only thing in the world that mattered. That first part of this interview, he was saying stuff. You should go back and look at it, and amazing. All right.
I'm honored. So, you want to take a look at some of this artwork?
Yeah, I do want to take a look at some of this artwork.
Most of this is in caustic, right?
There's about 2/3 of it. Encaustic is a process that was actually highlighted during the Egyptian period when they were making masks and paintings of people, a process of melting beeswax and tree resin and putting pigments in it to make colors, and then burning it and sculpting it to create what you want. There's a mixture here of encaustics, tree resin, and the painting on your far right is done with shellac that's set on fire. It burns and it spreads itself across the wax real quickly, not necessarily controllably. And that's the interesting thing about encaustics is it is a skill to learn how to control it without it all melting away. Particularly on some of these smaller pieces where there's real precise lines.
Yeah.
Those are often hard to get.
Yeah, I've never worked with encaustic myself. I recognize it because I've seen people work with it, but I've never done it myself.
I didn't know what encaustic was until I came to Portland, and people use it like it's really cool.
It smells bad usually.
It maybe kills a few brain cells, no matter how much you vent it. It does give you an excuse to play with fire in your studio.
Yeah. This is really fascinating right here. The way that he says that you used a blowtorch for some of it.
A small torch, yes, and after the wax is all on it, it's carved out, other waxes are put in, but then shellac is spread on it. And once the shellac is on it, you move it around with a torch. It sets on fire, lights, makes a really beautiful blue flame, and then you wax over that, and then do that again, and you start to build up layers of images and textures.
And the wax provides a really shiny, for the most part, a pretty shiny surface. Makes it look like it's almost a tile or something, but it's.
And as it cures,
canvas, yeah.
As it cures, it will stay shiny for quite a period of time. There is the next one is, as I said a little bit earlier, sometimes the paper under your painting looks better than your painting. And one day I noticed that all the browns and umbers I was using were on my craft paper, looked really kind of like leather and books, and so I started working with them and doing the collages and inserting words. There's another piece over here that's done with paper bags also. These are paper grocery bags, and I cut words out of grocery bags, and there are strings out of Nordstrom sacks and Macy's sacks here.
Oh, is that how you do this part?
Right. And then this is Mount St. Helens ash, which I use a lot of it in some of my paintings.
Where do you get that? Just go up to the mountain?
And when Mount St. Helens blew up, I collected about 10 pounds of it, and I just have it in my garage.
Back in '83.
Yep. Yeah.
You've had it since '83.
Yeah, just hauling around. Some of us are just collectors, And,
I remember when that stuff dumped on the street. We had to go out and sweep the street out in front of the house because that was going to destroy all the engines in town.
Oh yeah,
right?
sure. It did wreck lawnmowers. It just sucked through those things and made big clouds.
So this is actually. The color and the whole thing is made of St. Helens ash?
Well, no, this is St. Helens ash mixed in a crackle medium with marble dust.
Okay.
And then I dry it with a dryer and it cracks.
It's very cool.
It's a background. And then I used to do a lot of rodeo and Western art. this is an example of that. This is a new piece this year. But then I started combining my rodeo and watercolor art with encaustics, and so this is an example of one of the newer pieces that I do a watercolor. I wax over it, and then I start rubbing oils and
now all of this
pigments in it.
all of this crackling and pigment here is all very unpredictable, right? I mean,
Yeah, except a lot of what I do draw and scrape in, and then I rub oils into it to make it more textured.
okay.
The piece right in front of it is a burl I found one time, and it just seemed to lend itself to
Almost looks like a
putting
bone.
wax on it.
It's a very light piece of wood. I mean, light
It
colored. Oh, is there encaustic on the
Yeah, that's
on the,
why
on
it's
the
got
surface?
it's got a
Okay.
½ inch of wax here that I've carved into.
Okay.
So I put
And that's on both sides.
I put 30 jars of silly putty around it to prevent the wax from going in the wood, and then I poured layers of wax and carved it and rubbed oils and things. And this piece was a follow-up. We didn't talk about this, but I did this drawing right before I left for the hospital. What I find interesting about it is the day that I had the cardiac arrest, that I had drawn this, and that I lost the sight in my left eye, which is a piece gone from an orb up here, and I had drawn a pendulum, and I do have no longer any sense of time. So when I got home, that was quite striking to me.
And you also described, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but when you described the
picture frame.
rectangular picture frame that you went through, that looks like what you described to me.
Well, and this was done before the event happened. I mean, the drawing was almost precisely that. So.
And then now this is the one that you did right after.
Yeah, this I did a tribute to Jennifer Warren's song. It's called "Shred the Poems." That's my idea.
Do these two have a connection for you as far as, I mean, I see two orbs, and this pattern here is the same as the pattern, basically.
And I wanted to link them as if that was where I was before my event.
Yeah.
And in the piece of prose I saw, it said, "Shred the poems and set them free out across the western prairie." So I imagined this, why I used it for my book, this piece of a poem of ourselves, a script of ourselves that gets shredded and it gets spread to the wind. Like I said, we all got stories that maybe can be of value to other people.
The orb in the background is complete. That's good. There's nothing missing out of
Nothing
it.
missing from that.
How did your art style change before and after the event?
Well, it used to be far more precise and detailed because I could see well, and now I don't have sight in this eye, and that really did affect my perception, my ability. But I have done some more and more detailed things. You do some compensatory things and using magnifying glasses.
What would you say is the changes that happened for you after your experience, your near-death experience?
In what realm?
In your life in general. Is there a shift, or did you just come out saying, "Wow, that was a great experience"? I mean, there had to be a change in the way that you approached your life, I would think.
I think that a lot of people have said to me, "Well, you're your old self again," and that's a really difficult thing to describe. But the old Fred didn't come back, and I think in a lot of ways I tried to pretend that I was okay and that I was the me I used to be. I told a priest had come to see me, a wonderful woman. Soon after I woke up, I sat I was sitting in my bed. I looked like Frankenstein, honest to God. There were no my eyes had protruded from my head from the force. They actually had come out, and I'd be too descriptive, and they were bright red like a Coca-Cola sign. And there wasn't anything that from my ears down through my abdomen that wasn't stitched. And anyway, I sat there on the bed and I said, I don't know what happened to me. And I didn't know this person at that point. I said, but it felt like all this shell that had been around me broke, and there were just shards all over the floor. And everything that had ever happened that had been negative in my life, or bad feelings, abuse, it just all fell away. There was nothing but really forgiveness left for the people in my past, or in myself. You know, that's the thing that really I think we have to strive for, is show compassion and forgiveness to ourselves.
That's the hardest thing for me to do. I am really unforgiving.
That's time. You have to ask yourself sometimes, well, what's the worst thing that will happen if I forgive myself?
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that will happen if I give myself a break? The same break that I give anybody else.
I know that's something that I just got done with therapy, so
I think
I'm a little raw.
to me, the worst thing that could happen is I could forgive myself, but somebody else could not forgive me and still hold that grudge.
For me, it's this process. It's always a process. There's nothing ever that I can say, oh, well, now this is true, or now I understand this. It's always like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. And it's always, I'm 50 years old and I'm still realizing things about myself that I didn't ever realize before. And I'm sure I'll do it for the rest of my life. And
See, and I'm another quarter of a century down the line from you.